President Ronald Reagan once said, "Evil is powerless if the good are unafraid." The disastrous consequences of silence and indifference resulted in one of the worst atrocities against mankind, the Holocaust. In 2000 and 2004, I had the privilege of studying the Holocaust in Europe and Israel. My experiences were life-changing. Sachsenhausen, located near Berlin, was the first concentration camp built under Heinrich Himmler following his appointment as chief of German police in 1936, and held more than 200,000 prisoners. It became a training center for the SS, many of whom went on to serve as commandants at death camps. In 1942 and 43, captured British and American airmen were sent to Sachsenhausen, where many were tortured by the Gestapo. The Soviet Red Army liberated the camp in April 1945. On September 26, 1992, a neo-Nazi extremist group set fire to one of the barracks. This damage serves as a reminder of anti-Semitism and hate that still exists throughout the world. This monument, one of many at Sachsenhausen, is dedicated to the political prisoners who opposed Hitler's fascist regime. These prisoners wore an ID badge in the shape of a red triangle. Buchenwald concentration camp was established near the picturesque town of Weimar, Germany in 1937. The infamous commandant of Buchenwald, Karl Koch, and his wife Ilse were known for their brutal treatment of prisoners. Both were tried for their war crimes. Karl was hung, and Ilse later committed suicide. Buchenwald was also the site of cruel and inhumane medical experiments. This is one of the pathology rooms. The camp became the final destination of transports from Auschwitz and Gross Rosen. Prisoners, including Elie Wiesel, the author of Night, were liberated April 11, 1945, by members of the Third Army. A memorial panel to all inmates of the camp is located at the site where survivors gathered in memory of their dead comrades on April 19, 1945. This panel stays at the temperature of the human body year-round. Built in the late 18th century, Terezín, located in the Czech Republic, was used as a prison. In June 1940, it became the Prague Gestapo prison for people who resisted or protested Nazism. Block A was the site of torture. Torture was commonplace. Many prisoners, if they survived, were sent to concentration camps. Typhoid fever was rampant, and when the Russians liberated the prison in May of 1945, their medical team fortunately was able to stop the epidemic. Jewish and Christian memorial cemeteries serve as a final resting place for some of the victims outside the prison walls. Located beside the prison was the ghetto Theresienstadt, known as the Model Ghetto. It was used to deceive the Red Cross the Jews were being humanely treated. However, most of the Jews were eventually sent to Auschwitz and their death. It was also here that the children's opera Brundabar was performed. Most of those children pictured here did not survive. If you have ever watched Schindler's List, you would recognize this gate into Schindler's factory located in Krakow, Poland. Schindler, a registered Nazi, became a rescuer of Jews. He deceived the Nazis by using the Jews from the Platzau concentration camp to work in his enamelware factory, and then his armaments factory. One of the scenes in Schindler's List takes place at the Platzau concentration camp, constructed on the site of two Jewish cemeteries. The camp roadway was paved with crushed gravestones. This memorial marks that site. The commandant of Platzau is shown here randomly shooting Jews from the balcony of his home. This memorial marks the site of the Plaszow concentration camp and honors those who perished there. In 1962, the Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Authority at Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem named Oskar Schindler Righteous Among the Nations and planted an olive tree in his honor. He was buried in a Catholic cemetery in Jerusalem at his request, where visitors place a stone on his grave, a Jewish custom. God in Jewish tradition is known as the Rock of Israel. Like God, a stone or a pebble is enduring and permanent, and according to belief, God is stronger than death and his love is unending. So placing a stone on a grave is symbolic of God's infinite strength, love, and memory. The most infamous of all the concentration camps and death camps is Auschwitz, located in Poland. The gate's iconic and ironic words, Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free, welcomed the prisoners. However, there was no way out. Prisoners' suitcases were confiscated. This one belonged to a little boy. Babies' clothing and shoes were taken. The owners would not need them here. Women's hair was shaved. Some was woven into fabric or woven into netting, as shown here. If the prisoners were lucky enough to be allowed to live as slave laborers, they were issued uniforms like these. The unlucky ones were sent to the showers and gassed. This is the execution wall where many prisoners met a quick death, but not before being tortured. Many people do not realize the magnitude of the size of Auschwitz and its many subcamps. The main entrance and guardhouse of Birkenau, the largest subcamp, is one of the most photographed images of the Holocaust. These are the train tracks leading to ultimate death. This view from the guardhouse tower shows just some of the remaining barracks. The barracks had been used as horse stables for the German army and housed 52 horses in each barrack. Repurposed, these barracks were filled with more than 400 prisoners apiece. This death cell serves as a memorial to Father Maximilian Kolbe. This Catholic priest is honored for exchanging his life so that a Jewish man could live. In 1945, when the guards heard the Soviets were closing in, they tried to blow up the evidence of their atrocities. These are the ruins of Crematorium 1. These are the ruins of Crematorium 2. This memorial, located near the crematorium, where services are held in memory of the victims, contains plaques in various languages which state, "However, let this place be a cry of despair and a warning to humanity where the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe." Commandant Rudolf Höss, shown on the right with Heinrich Himmler, was tried and sentenced to death. He met his fate, death by hanging, on these gallows outside the gas chamber entrance in Auschwitz. The charming city of Warsaw, Poland, was the site of one of the largest Jewish ghettos established in 1940. Miles of ghetto walls trapped the Jews inside. This is all that remains of the wall today. The wall stood 10 feet high with 3 feet of barbed wire at the top, encircling 3.5 square miles. Ghetto residents did all they could to maintain a sense of normality in abnormal conditions. However, life in the ghetto deteriorated rapidly. You could be arrested for any reason. Failure to tip your hat to a Nazi could mean immediate death. On the eve of Passover, April 19, 1943, the Germans began the process of liquidating the ghetto. Young Mordecai Onilevich led an armed uprising which stunned the Germans and lasted almost a month. The Natan Rappaport Monument honors Mordecai Onilevich and all of the heroes of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The back of the monument depicts a Nazi officer pushing people to the Umschlagplatz loading station for deportation of its inhabitants to Treblinka death camp. This monument, Mila 18, sits on the ruins of the entrance to an underground bunker where more than 120 Jews lived during the uprising. As the Germans were gassing the bunkers, many of the Jews decided to end their own life rather than die at the hands of the Nazis. The Umschlagplatz Memorial is located on the site of the train station platform outside the Warsaw Ghetto, where Jews were loaded and transported to their death beginning in July 1942. Broken trees on the top of the memorial represents the forest of Treblinka, their final destination. Treblinka Death Camp is located in a beautiful forest. Most of Warsaw's Jews perished there. When the Nazis realized that liberators were on the way, they destroyed the camp. These are the remnants of the railroad tracks leading into the camp. This monument overlooks the 17,000 stones that represent the 17,000 communities, small and large, whose Jews perished here. It is overwhelming. Jan Korczak was a doctor and educator who ran an orphanage in Warsaw. He was ordered by the Nazis to escort the Jewish children to the Umschlagplatz. Korczak refused and went with the children to Treblinka, where they were gassed upon arrival. He didn't have to die. He gave his life for his children. At least 13 gas chambers were built on this site. This stone at Treblinka honors Janusz Korczak. Near the memorial, overlooking the 17,000 stones, this particular stone serves as a reminder that we can never again stand by and ignore evil. Other significant historic sites in Warsaw include the Nożyk Synagogue, the only synagogue to survive the almost complete destruction of Warsaw. It was used as a stable for horses by the Nazis. Inspired by the Jewish resistance fighters in the Warsaw ghettos, the Poles led an uprising that lasted 63 days. 200,000 civilians died. This is a monument in their honor. Majdanek was a small camp located near Lublin, Poland, and originally housed Russian POWs and then later the Jews. The prisoners were transported through the main street of Lublin into the camp. There were numerous female SS overseers, including Hermione Braunsterner, Louise Dons, Elizabeth Noblick, and Hildegard Lockert. These are some of the prisoners these Nazis feared: men, women, and children. Stockpiles of Zyklon B gas were ready to exterminate them. One of the most shocking concentration camp memorials is in Majdanek. To the right of this mausoleum is a beautiful grassy field with wildflowers blooming. It was here, on November 3, 1943, that the SS had the Jews dig huge trenches. Roll call was held at 6 a.m., and 18,400 prisoners lined up in rows of 100, where they had to strip and wait as row by row they were led to the trenches, machine-gunned until all were dead. The Nazis referred to this event on November 3, 1943, as Harvest Day. Loud dance music was played for 12 hours so that the residents of Lublin could not hear the gunfire. As you can see, the town is so close to the camp that it is not possible that they didn't know what happened behind those barbed wire fences. After the war, their bodies were exhumed, taken to the crematoriums, and burned. The ashes were interned in the urn-like base under the dome of the monument. The message on the face of the dome reads, "Let our fate be a warning to you." Israel was the last stop on my journey. This tiny little nation in the middle of the Middle East is rich in history. After high school, male and female Israelis served 2 years with the military to continue to preserve the lives of the Jews, many of whom settled there after the Holocaust. While there, I studied at Yad Vashem, ranked 4th in the world in top 25 museums. Vlad Kamid, Holocaust survivor and resistance fighter during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, was our trip leader and our beloved educator. Volodka's book, On Both Sides of the Wall, chronicles her experiences as a teenage girl fighting Nazi terror. One of our speakers, Dov Freiberg, was 12 years old when his family was deported to the Lodz ghetto. His final destination was the Sobibor death camp, where at the age of 16 he was part of the only successful revolt in a death camp. Dr. Rabbi Herschel Klepfish, pictured on the left, at the age of 90 in 2000, told us his story as a liberator. He was studying in Paris when he learned that Germany invaded his home country of Poland on September 1st, 1939. Unable to return to his family, he enlisted in the British Army and on D-Day landed in Normandy under the command of General Eisenhower. Herschel Klepfish helped liberate numerous concentration and death camps, including Bergen-Belsen and Buchenwald. He later learned that his wife, parents, brother, and sister were all murdered by the Nazis. Rabbi Klepfish said, "Human beings who are indifferent are responsible for the suffering of others." Dr. Yehuda Bauer lectured extensively on Holocaust history and the role the bystander and indifference played in the murder of millions of innocent people. It is almost impossible to understand and explain the depths of man's depravity and lack of compassion for fellow man. At the 1993 dedication of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., survivor Elie Wiesel said, "For the dead and the living, we must bear witness. For not only are we responsible for the memories of the dead, we are also responsible for what we are doing with these memories." I believe we have a moral obligation, a moral duty to keep alive the memory of those who suffered and perished in the Holocaust and other genocides. We must do all that we can, individually and collectively, to stop or prevent human rights abuses throughout the world. Elie Wiesel wrote, "To forget would not only be dangerous, but offensive. To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time." In closing, I would like to share the words of Pope John Paul II. He said, "May it serve today and for the future as a warning. There must be no yielding to ideologies which justify contempt for human dignity on the basis of race, color, language, or religion. Never again."